Watch out. Spoilers. This is the biggest leap since Mario 64. I honestly think I mean that. Half-Life. Alyx. One of Half-Life 2's biggest strengths is making you feel like you're truly there, fighting for your friends and for a world free from the Combine. This is amplified to 11. Not just due to VR, but in the further improvements Valve has made to their facial animations, their body language. As incredible everything Valve does here, after having played other VR titles first, one can see they were playing it safe in some regards. As they should have. VR needs to be as accessible as possible. And what they do here, they do very well. Placing your hand over your mouth to protect yourself from toxic gas from Zen life. Navigating the dark with a flashlight on your wrist. Pulling a head crab off your face. The gravity gloves. Simply pointing at a small object and flicking your wrist will cause it to effortlessly fly across the room and into your hand. This to me is what VR is all about. Making you feel a part of the game's world. So convenient and natural, you may find yourself trying to do it even after taking the headset off.
I almost forgot! Alyx, up here! You're gonna need a gun! Don't worry, it's unloaded. It's unloaded now!
In a parallel to the climax of Half-Life 2's Citadel, your weapons are confiscated in a man-trap. But not your gravity gloves. As opposed to having an overcharged ability to grab objects from a distance. You gain the powers of a wizard. The smile I had on my face. As you put your hands together, they tremble with power. An invigorating and empowering romp before the story's end. What prevents me from recommending this as the most accessible, however, is its demanding graphics. Even on low settings, this had the fans of my RTX 2070 sounding like it was about to take flight. Irregular frame rates and disorienting loading screens slightly soured an otherwise cutting-edge experience. Splatoon 3. A complete improvement in nearly every way from 2. Instead of staring at a list of names filling up a lobby, you're free to practice with the weapon you're bringing into the next battle. The squid roll is a small addition but adds a layer of depth to the game's established movement system of swimming through ink by providing a small window of invincibility. I find this useful for avoiding damage from splat bombs and landing goals in clam blitz for you freaks out there. The game's environment direction really reminds me how much I really want to move to a big city. I gotta get out of my podunk town. Salmon Run has been greatly expanded on. New and creative enemies, complete with a huge boss. Tons of exclusive rewards, along the incentive of quick cash and ability chunks. Occasionally, there will be so many enemies on the screen, it begins to remind me of how chaotic the action can become in Risk of Rain 2. And that unfortunately includes frame drops. The Tri-Stringer. The weapon featured on the box. This has to be my favorite new weapon in games I've seen in a long time. While I personally feel its strength lies in assisting in firefights for your teammates to finish off opponents, it can very well one-shot enemy players with well-timed and well-placed shots. It has a wide spread for ink coverage. Its arcing shots can go up and over cover, taking out players thinking they were safe. And if you notice, its shots leave small bombs behind, allowing you to create traps where you predict enemy players will move to. When I first used this weapon when the game launched, I didn't quite understand it at all. In fact, I used it so poorly I honestly felt a little embarrassed. But seeing what I can do now gives me a sense of pride. Castlevania III. Did you like Castlevania 1? This is straight up more of it. That is not to say that is a rehash by any means. This sequel is packed with content. 4 playable characters. Alternate paths. 4 years before Rondo of Blood. A killer soundtrack featuring numerous pieces that have been brought back in later titles. One of my personal favorites being Aquarius. Of all the games in this franchise I've played, this one might just be the most difficult. Either this one or Bloodlines. The Famicom version features a soundtrack with more channels due to a chip that the NES couldn't support, and surprisingly, a less brutal difficulty. They amped up the damage enemies would inflict, and seriously nerfed Grant. Playing through the game on stream for Halloween last year, I couldn't help but gush at the game's choice of color palettes. Everything pops out. Resident Evil 4 VR. So many extra mild details, such as pulling the pins on grenades and lobbing them, spraying yourself in the face with first aid, dual wielding, ringing the little bells, holding your codec. The merchant shooting range shines more than ever in this version, both from just the sheer gunplay added from VR and challenge. Learning to efficiently reload each firearm as quickly as possible becomes pivotal to earning every bottle cap. I actually prefer this game's method of holstering your currently equipped items on your physical body, as opposed to Alyx's switching which weapon you have with the right stick. Actually reaching for your pistol, grabbing it, and leaving a Ganado reeling back from a headshot will never not feel amazing. Why I actually recommend this over Half-Life Alyx is that it runs on the Quest 2 itself, as opposed to relying on your PC's hardware. Drawback is, it's an exclusive, and I'm sure I don't have to elaborate more on that. However, if you want an incredible first-person action-oriented experience without breaking the bank, I cannot suggest this enough. Borderlands. Game of the Year. Enhanced. Guns. Explosions. Numbers. More guns. New abilities. More guns! Action RPG, hack and slash, FPS goodness. As much as I love how this game allows one to kick back and shoot whatever breeze they please with their buddies, I found myself surprised at the amount of detail and atmosphere in the world. Pandora is a planet ravaged by colonialism that is subsequently abandoned. Both towns you spend time in are hanging on by threads, one of which rests among literal mountains of junk. Looking across the barren landscape, it successfully sells itself as a wasteland. A land where one can only think of oneself first, lest they become just another splatter on which a pile of treasure lies upon. Its soundtrack helps set this mood as well, especially Fyrestone. Wandering in this corner, I found beauty in this irradiated pond filled with sickly colored glowing mushrooms. Playing with friends is by far the definitive way to experience the game. In 2022, I was lucky enough to consistently stream playing through it with some buddies from my Discord server. Thanks again, everyone. Looking forward to playing through the sequel. Final Fantasy IX. Inevitability of death, of growing old. Perhaps this day is your last. What comes after this life? Is there such a thing? Will we be remembered? How do we deal with our mortality? I've been mulling over these questions a lot the past year. This entry of the franchise deals with those questions and more. 9 was developed to be a more traditional, high fantasy style adventure, in the vein of entries prior to 7 and 8. This is subverted with a science fiction twist. aliens. A dying civilization seeking to prolong its existence at the cost of others. I really love how the summons in this game are treated as weapons of mass destruction, with Braun invading neighboring kingdoms to pillage them, and then using them to conquer or destroy. A feature that does wonders to develop the characters here is the ATE, Active Time Event System. Throughout the story, oftentimes in towns and cities, the party will split up to explore. You'll be given the option to see what everyone is up to as you yourself explore, usually as Zidane. This really makes each character feel like they have their own agency, their own personality, as opposed to being conjoined at the hip, shadowing your every footstep. I adore how diverse the cast is, and Quina is the absolute firebomb. First, they're a blue mage, one of the funnest jobs in the series to me personally. The ability to learn all sorts of crazy and unorthodox moves monsters will sling at you throughout the game adds a rewarding collection aspect to the game. However, instead of learning a move by being hit by it, Quina straight up eats them. The trade-off is that the monster must have 25% of their HP left to do it successfully. To me, this made it feel a bit more like monster collecting RPGs such as SMT or Pokemon. While at the start you may have one or two moves that aren't crazy strong, maybe fulfilling more niche elemental damage types like water and wind, you'll have some wicked useful stuff later on. They carried me through the final boss thanks to Limit Glove. While Quina makes it clear they're coming along purely to taste all the delectable dishes the world has to offer, their carefree and whimsical nature is what stuck with me. Why you care about small things? World only have two things. Things you can eat, and things you know can eat. Throughout the earlier parts of the story, they will just duck the fuck out when things get too hot. And you'll just have to find them again. Oftentimes at the end of story-driven games, I'll play through it once and, satisfied, put it down. Not with this entry. The messages, the story, the mechanics, the characters. I want to play through it again, and with a guide, so I see everything this world has to offer. And not only that, this time I picked up the Steam version, so I can use mods. Lily's Well. If you are understandably squeamish to body horror and or have trypophobia, I recommend skipping this part. Here's a timestamp. Dread. Disgust. Mockery of the body. I felt terrible for the protagonist. And to reach the true ending, you'll have to witness nearly every disturbing fate that can await Lily. The violence really can't be understated. Before you even witness firsthand what this game has in store, you'll be imagining it once you flip through a book detailing the local flora stored in the living room. The sprite work is top-notch, reminiscent of a ZX Spectrum. I love the scan effect going on with all of the colors. Inside the house, it creates a distorting wave effect, adding more to the feeling that something is very, very wrong. The premise is simple and excellent at evoking the player's imagination as to what could await outside Lily's house. Stepping outside, you're met with a suspenseful yet gloomy tune. Lily stands out as the one bright light in this quietly oppressive environment. By the time I reached the true ending, I felt such relief that there was a real escape from Lily's torment. I almost began to tear up a bit. There are tons of secrets, some of which genuinely made me gasp. Some from plot revelations, some from... well, you'll see. Some secrets can be a bit challenging to find, so I recommend using the guides on Steam. I encourage you not to look this up on YouTube. Nearly all the first page results show spoilers in the thumbnails. Trust me, seeing the sprite art of what awaits going in blind is worth it. Oh yeah, it's totally free too. If you wish to support the dev, however, there is a $10 DLC on the stores page, which is just a making of documentation and high quality artwork. I don't consider myself qualified to properly convey how cutting edge and influential System Shock was. Instead, let me ask, have you played nearly any action game in the past decade and a half? If your answer is yes, then I can almost promise you will warm up to it once you get past the first impression this game gives. It is not as intimidating as it appears. The main thing you need to become accustomed to is constantly switching your crosshairs function between looking around and navigating the interface. As you play, you might even be reminded of Metroid Prime, among other series. This title became a surprise near obsession for me late summer of last year. I couldn't be happier to finally give this game a chance. And you know what I'm really looking forward to now? I haven't played through the sequel. This was far from everything I played last year, but there were games that really stuck with me. So, what were yours? Comment below.